Alright, YouTube, I was about to make like a musical thing where I did like karaoke of Electric Light Orchestra's Evil Woman only with Hillary Clinton lyrics, and I promise that I'll do that. It's just a matter of at this time of night my voice actually is not quite as good as it is earlier in the day. You know, you get a couple of cups of coffee into you, and you've had a good night's sleep, and hopefully the allergen count's low. You actually sound a lot better towards the end of the day, especially after talking a lot. Not so good. I decided it was time, though, to reveal this ancient mystery, this sacred truth that nobody seems to understand, which is that the modern neoliberal movement is basically just moral traditionalism under another title. Now, think about it. What does the moralist centrally believe, the traditionalist? They would say, and this would be a criticism levied at them by actual leftists as opposed to neoliberals that don't bring the issue up and just pretend that things are self-evident. Oh, well, they're stuck in the past because, why? Because they believe that the way that things have been done for a period of time by their ancestors for a number of years, whatever, you should just stay with the status quo. It's sort of the marriage argument that was used by the traditional, more right-wing elements. Oh, well, marriage has always been between one man, one woman in this country. That doesn't hold any legal weight, but that's a traditionalist argument. This is the way it's been. Why rock the boat? Why change it? Why you're just making up a new definition? Now, of course, as a libertarian, I take a different perspective. I don't give a fuck if there's marriage at all, because it's a state contract. But the neoliberal does the same thing with many of the things that they talk about, especially when they're trying to take a moral or an ethical standpoint. Not so much when you're talking about economic issues. On economic issues, I'll tell you this, the Republicans and Democrats are the same fucking thing. They're both big spenders, they're both big taxers. The idea that decreasing taxes by 2% across the board is a massive tax cut is laughable. It's not a massive tax cut, it's a very slight easing of an already high tax level. Should be 20%, shouldn't be 2%. That's my feeling anyway. The neoliberal would say, oh, well, the way things have been done in the last couple of years is the way that things should continue being done. For the same moral and ethical reason, it doesn't boil down to a reasoned argument or a logically coherent, necessarily, argument of why things should be done a certain way. For instance, on immigration, they would say, yes, we need to not block anybody from a certain country or background because reasons. No border wall because reasons. Immigration objectively good because reasons. Movement across borders, good, for reasons. Now, the real reason is, of course, it helps their banker buddies and their corporate buddies. They don't really care about the little people, immigrants coming across the border. As far as they're concerned, you could hang 10 million immigrants. The Democrats wouldn't really care as long as they could make money from it and tax it, have a death tax on dead immigrants or something like that. But they take up the same exact argument. The moralist and traditionalist says that things have been done a certain way, therefore it is objectively right to continue doing them this way. The neoliberal simply says the new way of doing it is objectively right for the same reason, because it's been instituted at some time in man's recent past in one of these countries. It is the same argument. All that differs is the length of time that the tradition has been around. The neoliberal is simply tomorrow's centrist seeking to implant what they believe is morally and ethically correct upon the population as though it was something both new and something worth defending on a traditionalist basis. In that respect, they're even more dishonest than the moralist traditionalist. The moralist traditionalist is willing to go back to the 17th, 18th, 19th century, point out exemplars of their argument, and say, well, these people who didn't have electricity and largely shat in the outhouse were already practicing something, therefore this is the way we should do things, because pride in ancestors, pride in heritage, or something like that. They're willing to make an argument that most people would discount because it doesn't make sense to them. The neoliberal, though, doesn't do that. They're not intellectually honest enough to do so. They pretend that the moral argument is bereft of any long tradition, and that therefore it's new, but it's also morally defensive. That is, they're still a moralist, and they're also statists. One thing we need to consider here is that leftist and liberal no longer mean the same thing. Maybe they did under Jimmy Carter. Maybe they did under Walter Mondale. They no longer do. A liberal is just another word for a democratic partisan at this point within the country, who happens to believe that a 0.5% increase in taxes is a draconian and significant measure that will suddenly magically lift every minority community out of poverty. It's obviously not true. It's been tried. It doesn't work. And the neoliberal takes up the oft-repeated lie that just a little bit more government or a little bit more regulation or a little bit of some law or another above the little bits that have already been instituted by neoliberals before them is suddenly going to prove to be the magical tipping point after which all of society falls into perfect utopian order. I'm here to tell you it will never happen. A little bit more gun control on top of many other little bit mores of gun control will do nothing. A little bit more taxation to pay for welfare programs on top of many other little bit more taxations for welfare programs is not going to lift a single person out of poverty. It can maintain the status quo, which is an uneasy one, a seeming quiet as opposed to a real peace, and that's all it can do. A little bit more foreign adventurism, as the Clintons love, as the Bushes of the world as well love, because the neocons and neolibs are, again, the same exact thing. They're just partisan corporate cogs in a greater machine. A little bit more foreign interventionism and adventurism, on top of many other adventures and interventions we've staged around the world, will not magically stop terrorism, will not magically destroy those red commies or anything else along those lines. It simply doesn't work that way. That's not the way that the world works. They are intellectually dishonest idiots who have managed to fool actual leftists into thinking that they have something in common with them by contrasting a difference of 1 or 2% in their tax plans with a bunch of partisan neocons. And this is the way that they play the game. What they're really telling you, by the way, if both sides, so-called, were being intellectually honest, what they would be telling you is, yes, we are indeed the same thing. Now you have to choose between two equally bad economic programs, two equally warmongering foreign policy platforms. We just disagree on who we should bomb first, because we disagree on which bombing runs are going to make us more money long term. And that's essentially what they disagree on. The neoliberal is just a moralist by another name. They just don't, in many cases, even realize it. I think that some of these people, honestly, because of their academic upbringing, or because of what campaign office they worked for back when they were a college hippie or something, I think that a lot of these people honestly are unaware of the fact that basically they're the same thing as a bunch of neocons. When Hillary stands up in front of the nation, you know, only 400 or 500 people in Reno itself. The meeting that she held, the rally, was extremely small. It was almost laughable. There's footage from multiple angles there, and it wasn't very big. It was basically like half of a high school auditorium or something. She stands there, and with a straight face, she applauds George W. Bush. Are people so out of touch, are their attention spans so short that they don't remember what the Bush years were like? And what the Democrats said about Bush? They used to call him like the Antichrist in person, the living flesh, like literally the spawn of Satan. I tended to agree with them at the time. Bush was a disaster for this country, and here she is applauding him. Applauding Truman, you know, sorry about Hiroshima, Truman. Oh my goodness, this is somebody who doesn't live in the realm of reality anymore. Now, I don't think she's lived in the realm of reality since the 1990s at least. You know, look at what Bubba Bill did over in the former Yugoslav states with the Serbs over there. Everybody now, most of which didn't know anything about the conflict over Kosovo. Most people never even knew that it happened. A lot of, maybe at the time, they watched the news, they saw, yeah, Karadzic this, Serbs this, Albanian nationals that, Kosovo this. Okay, they had a general understanding that something was going on in those countries that they couldn't find on a map. Now all of a sudden, those Clinton allies are trotting out, oh, ethnic cleansing by Serbs, and here's Trump, and they have like vote Trump signs over in Serbia, proof positive he's the next Hitler, or something like that. Most people don't even know about that conflict. They don't even realize it happened. They don't know about the Gulf War either, the Persian Gulf War. They don't have any memory of that ever happening. For them, it skips basically from the Vietnam War to the conflict in Iraq. That's essentially their attention span. Hell, even the Korean War, half of them don't know anything about that either. You ask them, what's the DMZ? What's that? Where's Pyongyang on a map? You think they can find it? These are the sort of people you have voting for people like Hillary Clinton, apparently. These neoliberals, or I should say the actual left, as in people who are far, far further to the left than Hillary Clinton, are supporting a person who is a jingoistic war hawk, who openly chuckled about Gaddafi being killed. We came, we saw, he died. Ha ha ha. Yeah, what a funny joke, Hillary. You know, him getting sodomized and summarily executed by terrorists who now control a lot of Libya's land and oil, who thought it was great when the Muslim Brotherhood rose up in Egypt, almost destroyed their nation. Thankfully, their military cracked back down, and now you have military constitutional law. Probably thinks it's some great thing that Erdogan over in Turkey is cracking down on people's free speech as well over there, and on their free expression and so forth. Probably takes up a similar line to what Solon said about Venezuela several years ago, back when their economy was doing well. Oh, yeah, see, socialism can work. This should be the standard bearer of socialism in the Americas. We should import it here. Now that their economy has collapsed and, you know, they're forcing people to work on farms, forced labor, and they've disarmed everybody and destroyed all the weapons, and they are abusing and jailing people for no reason. Oh, all of a sudden the Clintons and Solons and all these groups, oh, no, that's not real socialism. Just ignore that story we posted years ago about how it was. It's retarded. Real, genuine leftists, either American style or in a more, socialistic style, I can't imagine why they would support Hillary Clinton. Her policies aren't easily differentiated from George W. Now, we know how bad George W. was. Do we know how bad Trump would be? Who do you think will be worse long term? If you assume that they're both bad people, I'm going to take a wild guess. I'm going to say George W. George W., absolutely. Killed 500,000 people over in Iraq. Utterly destabilized the country for a generation. Fucked around in Afghanistan, wasted $5 trillion of our dollars. Started this massive deficit and debt problem that Obama has, generally continued, that shows no signs of decreasing. Began the modern police state, the modern domestic surveillance apparatus, although Clinton had already put the rudiments in place before that. Was an idiot. Tarnished our reputation all over the world. This is the person Hillary Clinton looks to and says, disagrees with Trump on this, therefore Bush good, Trump bad. Are you nuts? Do you actually take that seriously? I hope not. But the neoliberals like Hillary Clinton, they're not leftists. I mean, you gotta stop, when you criticize a neoliberal, don't say, oh, well, these fucking liberals with their tax and spend, these horrible liberals with their multiculturalism. That's not liberalism. That's neoliberalism. Genuine classical liberalism does want to preserve American culture. It's the basis of libertarianism, not the basis of the modern leftist movement, so-called, under people like Clinton. They're two totally different things. A liberal from 100 years ago would have been closer aligned with what a libertarian is today than what the Democratic Party has devolved into. There are very few Democrats and very few Republicans who have anything in common whatsoever with our founding goals and purposes, that have a shred of common sense or dignity. That includes most of the Republicans in Congress. When they talk about, by the way, they try to conflate, Trump behind in polls with, Republicans could lose the Senate. I don't care if they lose the Senate. I don't care if everybody in the Senate and House is removed from office and a fresh crop of new faces is brought in. They'd be probably just as bad most of the time. We've turned so-called representatives into nothing short of stupid celebrities anyway, so what's the point? We shouldn't even bother having a Senate or a House. They obviously don't function. What's the purpose? Just have a dictator if things are going to be that stupid. You'd probably have a better, easier time constraining a dictator at this point with the Constitution under strict constructionism than you would the legislature. That's how bad things have gotten. These morons are running our country into the ground. It takes both parties to run it into the ground. When people just blame one side or the other, just rant about, those evil, fucking, right-wing fascist Republicans, those stupid, pinko, commie, liberal traitors, You're only getting half of the story there. It took both of them to do this because they agree in spirit on most issues. Most Republicans in Congress are neocons. Most Democrats in Congress are neolibs. They agree with each other. There's a reason that all good ideas die in the House and all bad ideas make it to the desk of the president and most of them get signed. There's a reason why all the good ideas get shot down by cities, by states, by courts, however they get shot down, and all bad ideas magically get labeled retrospectively constitutional by the Supreme Court. There's a reason why on most issues, common sense is abandoned and the government is objectively and purely wrong. So these neoliberals, like Hillary Clinton, who stand up and talk in soaring platitudes about ethics and morals and think of the children, oh, this is so wrong that these children would hear offensive things. Think good, long, and hard about what she said about Gaddafi and all the children that died in Libya as a result of what she did in her capacity at the State Department under Obama. Think about all those people that died in Egypt. Think about all the people that died in Iraq and Afghanistan under Bush, who she apparently glowingly supports now. She's at least honest enough to point out the fact that she's in support of that sort of foreign policy. She voted for the Iraq War. She was glowingly in support of it. She didn't just vote for it. She made a speech on the Senate floor about how great it would be. Oh, it'll be a nice quick war. We'll be welcomed as liberators. Things will be so much better. We gotta get rid of Saddam. He's evil. Probably has WMDs. No, I'm sorry. She wasn't just drinking up the Kool-Aid fed to her by Bush. She was thinking for herself. She thought the same thing. She was wrong. Get over it. She doesn't get a pass on that from me. One of the things that most prevents me from supporting somebody like Hillary Clinton is not, oh, I think she's far left. Oh, white genocide. Oh, immigration. Has nothing to do with those. It's her ties to Bush. George W. George W. was an absolute incoherent traitor who should have been impeached, should have been removed from office, and should have been thrown into a dungeon for the rest of his natural-born days, along with that bastard Dick Cheney, who probably deserved a lot worse than Bush did, because let's face it, he was probably a little bit more the brains behind that operation. And Ashcroft, and Colin Powell, and all these other numbnuts up there should have had the same thing coming to them. They should all be forgotten about in a cell right now. They should be in Gitmo. We should take the people that are in Gitmo and give them a proper trial, use that extra room to put all the Bush-era cronies in there, and torture them for the rest of their lives. That's what we should do. Throw them away into a cell. Let them rot there. No visitors, no lawyer, because, they don't want the average American citizen to be able to have those things. No trial. Don't need a trial, apparently, since the government attempted to legalize its own treason on that issue, too. And Clinton and all of her cronies were in bed with the Bushes. Yeah, they were. Follow the money. Why do you think that the same Saudis that rub elbows with and are great friends with Herbert Walker, who, was in a building right next to the Pentagon on 9/11 along with members of the Bin Laden family, nothing strange happening there. I'm not going full conspiracy here, but it is a little bit odd. You've got to admit that. It is a little bit strange and a little bit of a bizarre coincidence to some of the things that happened that day, along with the airlift from hell or whatever it was called, or Satan's airlift, where they got all these people back out of the country so they wouldn't be killed. The same Bushes that were in bed with these same groups fund the Clinton Foundation. Do you think for a minute that Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and some of these nations care about AIDS research? Oh, sure. Here's $25 million to cure gay people with AIDS because everybody knows that theocratic Saudi Arabians care about homosexuals surviving HIV. Yes, Hillary, take our money, please. We feel so guilty for our sins in this world. Take our money so that we can absolve ourselves of this evil. Yeah, that's what happened. I'm sure that's why they gave the Clinton Foundation so much money. Yeah, and the Qataris and Bahrainis and all these others, the UAE and Pakistani, imams and stuff. They were pumping the Clinton Foundation full of money because they care about They really care about eliminating AIDS in the American homosexual population. Okay, yeah. Because that's exactly what we've come to expect from the Saudis now, isn't it? Along with women's rights. We're philanthropic work for battered women or so. The Saudis care about that. Yes, I'm sure the House of Saud cares about AIDS-ridden gay people and battered women. No, nothing could possibly be higher on their minds than homosexual rights and women's rights. Because we all know the Saudi Arabians, time and time again, swear up and down that they don't have gay people and raped women killed on a regular basis because it's part of their legal system. Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. The neoliberals ignore this fact. The neoliberals are willing to overlook all of these things because they are in it for the money. Unfortunately, what's happened is that the actual leftists have been hoodwinked into backing these same neoliberals because the neoliberals are the money grubbers. Just like the neoconservatives are not conservatives. They're money grubbers. But that means that they can outraise and outspend by 100 times over any real conservative seeking to challenge their seats. The neoliberals can outraise and outspend by 100 times any actual leftist trying to seek one of their seats. Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul and a handful of others that represent actual leftists or actual right-wingers are allowed a handful of token seats where they can't really do anything of any note, and they just sort of sit there and pose as charismatic figureheads of movements that these neocons and neoliberals collectively can override in every possible aspect. And when they pretend to be deadlocked, like over Obamacare, it's because of collusion where they're going to pretend to be deadlocked so that nothing gets accomplished actually removing such a program. One side plays devil's advocate, pretends to want to overthrow a bad program, and then gets stymied, usually by other neocons who carefully, strategically vote to make sure the measure doesn't quite pass, to give hope to people who want reform, keep them inflamed so that during election time they can blame the other party and they can turn it into, a wild mudslinging free-for-all. But at the end of the day, the neolibs and the neocons go and they drink together, and they have lunch together, and they fundraise together, and they rub elbows, and they fuck each other's husbands and wives. Because they're all exactly the same. I wonder how long it will be before actual leftists realize that the Democratic Party is not a leftist movement. When will conservatives, real conservatives, who do want substantially lowered taxes, who don't want the government any bigger, and in fact want it a lot smaller, and are kind of like right libertarians anyway, are going to wise up to the fact that people like Romney and McCain and Boehner and McConnell, they're not conservatives, they're neocons. The term neocon and neoliberal almost are misnomers because there's nothing conservative about a neocon, there's nothing liberal about a neoliberal. There's not. They're just corporatists, they're statists, they're authoritarians, they want to abuse you. They don't care what your skin color is, they don't care what your income is. They look at you as nothing more than a cheap vote. Just a fucking whore for them to fuck. That's all they see you as. Wake up. It's really hard to wake people up, but they almost want to stay in their slumber because if they peek their eyes open for a moment and see the hideousness vastly around them, it scares them so much they have nightmares and it takes them a while to go back to sleep. That's the problem with being red-pilled, as the colloquial term is. There are big problems in this country. Neoliberals are just a bunch of fucking moralists. Neoconservatives are just corporate, neoliberals. They're all the same thing. They're exactly the same. Obama, Bush, Clinton, they're saying the same things to you. You don't even realize it. Like everything George W. ever said, it sounds a lot like what Obama's saying. What's the difference other than Obama's got a D after his name and is more capable of using the English language because I guess he's not, half Cro-Magnon or something like that. It's the only difference. So, yeah, that's about all. Peace out.